Coming up now on Animal Outtakes. Now, Adrian, you work with your bare hands.
I do.
No gloves?
I don't like wearing gloves because I lose my sense of feel. And you can make a real bad mistake by doing that.
It's a job that most would not want. It requires quick reflexes and a thirst for the daring, extracting venom from snakes. And once it's collected, then what? We'll learn the delicate way this deadly product is packaged and shipped and where it's going. And if this guy was invited to a nice party, he's already wearing a tux. We're getting to know this dapper fella. This and much more straight ahead on Animal Outtakes. Hello and welcome to Animal Outtakes. I'm Marcia Panucci. This week, Zeus is on vacation, so he sent in his cousin, Harley. Cobras, mambas, and vipers, these are species of snakes you want to stay away from, right? But for the team at Southwest Florida Venom Farm, they are handling some of the world's deadliest snakes, and they're doing it for science. This certainly isn't what you want to see up close, the fangs of a venomous snake. But it's all in a day's work for the crew of Southwest Florida Venom Farm. What type of snakes do you have here in the facility?
We have lots, almost every type of venomous snake you can imagine. Everything from cobras and vipers and mambas to the native stuff we have here in Florida, like rattlesnakes, copperheads, coral snakes, cottonmouths.
Now, where do they come from?
It's a good question. Some of them we produce in-house, and some of them we get from the countries of origin. So if they come from the country of origin, Malaysia, Africa, Indonesia, once they come to the States and they get housed at our facility, they go through a quarantine process of approximately 90 to 120 days. When they're cleared medically by our vet, then we put them on the venom line and we extract venom from them.
So how many snakes would you say are in this building right now?
At any given time, we may have between 300 and 1,000 animals.
Oh my! I have to take a deep breath on that one. Here the staff extracts the venom from these reptiles, and it's a job that requires years of practice, lots of permits and regulations, and being somewhat of a daredevil.
We're going to do a diamondback rattlesnake. They're not poisonous. There is a couple species of snakes that are poisonous, but poison would mean that if you touch that animal, you're going to be, poisoned, right? Venom has to be injected. So the snakes are venomous. They're not poisonous. Venom is a complex mix of proteins that we're still trying to understand, and those proteins do certain things to individuals.
Venomous snakes have sharp, hollow fangs which can inject venom as a form of defense or to immobilize prey. Some species have neurotoxic venom. This will cause paralysis to the respiratory system. Others have hemotoxic venom. This toxin destroys tissue and helps with digesting prey. How often do you milk the snakes?
That's a good question. It really depends on the species. So certain species we'll do every 2 weeks. Other species that produce smaller amounts of venom, infrequently we'll do every 3 to 4 weeks. So mambas, for instance, we extract from them every 3 to 4 weeks. Coral snakes we might not do for maybe once a month. Some of the rattlesnakes we can do every 2 weeks.
Truth be told, there is much more to learn about snake venom. For the crew of Southwest Venom Farm, it's a risky business, but it's all in the name of science. Scientists from all over the world request these samples for research, which could one day take a bite out of cancer, diabetes, and diseases like Parkinson's and Alzheimer's. A little later in the show, we'll be back with the team of Southwest Florida Venom Farm to learn more about where the venom goes and the importance of how it is transported. They are birds, but they don't fly in the air. Instead, they use their wings to reach speeds around 15 to 25 miles an hour underwater. We're talking about penguins, and to get up close to one, well, we visited the Florida Aquarium in Tampa.
You know, Eric, there are so many of these wonderful animals that I want to take home.
Right.
You know, but Cliff is definitely at the head of the line. How did we manage to get such a lovely creature like this to be so docile and so loving?
Yeah, well, every penguin is different, and Cliff definitely has an affinity for people. He's a terrific animal for people to get to know, and with him, of course, comes the story of African penguins. In fact, people think, wait, Africa, penguins? That's news to me.
That's right, that should not be, but it is.
It absolutely is. Most of the penguins really don't live in the cold in Antarctica. Many of them, they're all south of the equator, but many of them are close to the equator, like in South Africa. It's more of a beach environment, but with good cold water, which is really important to their health.
So his inhabitants is in South Africa, is basically what you're saying.
Yeah.
And tell us a little bit about his history. Oh, he's just so sweet. Just look at him. He's just, does he like his neck rubbed? Because I do.
He does. And in fact, if you see some of that quivering action or the flippers, or he's just being very relaxed with you, that's kind of a flirtatious move on his part.
Oh,
he's saying, I like you a lot.
Well, I love you too, Cliff. What's his history?
Well, all of our penguins here have come to us from programs that are helping reproduce the penguins as part of a species survival plan. And the bigger story is the penguin counterparts in the wild are facing a lot of challenges. In South Africa, they're competing for space. You know, their homes, which are, they burrow, and even into the guano. That guano is harvested in many places where penguins live. The areas where they live is competing for beachfront property. The very food that they eat, the fisheries that they depend on, are fisheries that people utilize as well. So there needs to be balance and sharing between the space and the food and all the resources. But if we can help bring attention to the penguins of South Africa and other penguins around the world that need our help, then that's a real story in the background we want people to know about them. It's how they can help.
So we are of the myth that all the penguins have to come across the glacier and the snow,
right.
and we see the tuxedos walking, and we say, hi, it's in the cold, but he's really not.
He's a tropical penguin. A lot of penguins do come from the tropics. One of the things, again, is, and why you don't see penguins off an environment that has warm water, like our Gulf of Mexico or our Atlantic region, is those densely packed feathers give him a ton of insulation. They don't have the body fat of other marine mammals like, say, a seal or a whale, but they still swim in cold water. The water off the coast of South Africa is still good and cold. If you think more like a California coastline, it's along that, where the water's chilly but the beach is warm. And even here in his habitat at the Florida Aquarium, the water is kept chilly, but the room temperature is more like what you feel right here. And you do see that with penguins throughout the southern hemisphere, that a lot of them live in warm environments with cold water. And that also supports the fish upon which they feed and that are so important to their vitality.
Now we know here at the Florida Aquarium, he is given the best of the best treatment.
It's very true.
But could he make it on our beaches of Florida into the water if he had to?
If Cliff was to live in the wilds of Florida, it would not be a good future for him. The water is simply too warm and he would overheat. I mentioned that they have dense feathers. There's over, I believe, 75 per square inch packed into every quarter type space on there. And because of these tiny feathers, which make him so smooth, feel the flippers too.
Oh,
it almost feels like scales. That gives him the insulation in the water, but they work up a lot of energy when they're swimming and diving and hunting. They have excellent eyesight, and that beak reaches out and grabs every little shiny object, which is most likely a fish. And that's why that cold water helps keep them from overheating in the water. So they simply wouldn't do well in that warm water environment.
Now, one myth, Eric, we need to debunk.
Yes.
Are they really mean? Not this guy.
You know, mean is such a human term. I've never met a mean animal in my whole life. I've met some animals that were fully within their rights to tell me what they thought of me at that time, because maybe I surprised them or I startled them or I didn't introduce myself properly. And that's really an important part of this. When you got to know Cliff, it wasn't just like, let's go get a penguin. It's let's have a penguin that we built a relationship with. And every one of them's an individual.
So have I built a relationship with Cliff?
I think the proof is in right there in Cliff's relationship with
too.
you right now.
I
Hopefully
love
everyone
you.
else is building
I
one
love
with
you,
Cliff
Cliff.
too.
There are a little under 20 species of penguins, and all are found in the southern hemisphere. While most species can handle the cold, there are those that enjoy cooler temperatures. Instead of -58 in Antarctica, where the emperor penguin lives. The penguins found around the Galapagos Islands are comfy with the 73-degree water temps. Coming up next, this isn't your normal looking croc. Many active duty servicemen and women face a dilemma as they prepare for deployment. Who will look after their canine companion until they return? Dante's Den provides temporary boarding for their dogs as they serve. We honor the trust placed in us by members of the armed forces by giving their furry friends loving care, spacious dens, on-site veterinary care, and plenty of room to run and play. For more information, go to dantesden.org or call 844-DANTES-DEN.
So this little guy, Terry, has come all the way from Havana. So what is this little guy?
It's a little Cuban crocodile, and he is one of many critically endangered crocodiles. They are rapidly disappearing. The Cubans, by the way, have done a remarkably good job of trying to save them, but they're very limited on resources. And what it will take to save the Cuban crocodile as a species is a fair bit of money, because they have a very unusual situation as far as what's wrong. Let me tell you, in 1952, we estimated 250 of these animals were left, period. That was it. And we usually say 200 is a threshold level where you get below that. It's not good. You're going to lose the animal. Genetically, you don't have enough variation. The Cuban crocodile is an amazing creature. They're incredibly intelligent, they're incredibly acrobatic, athletic, have phenomenal eyesight, and have lived in the Caribbean for millions of years.
Now, what is the
man-king.
difference between the American croc and the Cuban?
croc? A great deal. American croc is a much larger crocodile, lives in estuarine, which means salt and fresh situations. Cuban croc is strictly a freshwater animal, and they don't get anywhere near as large as the American crocodiles do. They are much more active than American crocodiles. These guys can scamper, scurry, and even climb until they get to be too big to do that.
And he's got some toofers sticking out,
He's
doesn't
got
he?
some little teeth, yep. He was just hatched about, I think 2.5 months ago. This little girl will get to be probably 7-8 feet in length at the very most. And throughout her lifetime, she will produce babies about every other year. And her lifetime probably will be over a century. That's one of the problems with crocodiles. They don't breed rapidly. They don't do much of anything very rapidly. And they are very vulnerable because of that. It's a remarkable creature, absolutely remarkable creature. Beautiful, beautiful coloring. Beautiful patterns on them, ancient animals.
Coming up next, we're back at the venom farm. And this time, it's all about how the venom will be used.
Every year, 40% of all food in the U.S. never gets eaten.
40%. That's almost half the food we produce.
Food waste is a serious problem. It impacts all of us.
And it's expensive. Your family is throwing $1,500 a year in the trash.
We're working hard to put food waste on the chopping block.
And you can do the same at home.
Learn how to cook it, store it, and share it.
Just don't waste it.
Go to savethefood.com.
Monday at 4 on Suncoast View. Businesses and buildings keep springing up all over the Suncoast. I'm Stephanie Roberts. On Suncoast View, we'll get development details from our expert. The first Lego competition comes to our area. Some very smart and capable kids will be here to show us some building tricks. Plus, we'll learn how to silence our inner critic in order to succeed. And Stottlemyre's Smokehouse joins us in the kitchen.
Monday at 4 on Suncoast View.
Mark Zupan, part of the U.S. Paralympic rugby team. In my game, movement is everything. I get frustrated when my move is blocked, especially when that guy has no right to be there, even just for a minute. I love a challenge, but I don't like to play this game every day.
A message from the United Spinal Association.
There are more than 100,000 animals on Earth that are venomous. And this toxin from spiders, scorpions, and snakes are being studied by scientists who are breaking it down and learning about how venom works and how it might benefit us. But before research can be done, you have to first get the venom. Okay, Greg, now we've seen how it gets extracted, but you do your magical mystical after all of this, correct?
I do. I work my science on it. My company now specializes in some of the deadliest toxins in the world. We really specialize in bacterial toxins and plant toxins that are so deadly that our building is in 24/7 lockdown. Every scientist needs to be vetted through the FBI and Homeland Security, and we're locked down. We have the CDC show up as surprise inspections all the time. We work very closely with them on regulations, and because we work so closely with toxins, it just sort of led naturally into working with venoms as well.
That's heady.
It's pretty dangerous stuff, and we work with some things that are so deadly, and it always amazed me that we work with toxins that are actually put into little glass ampules under vacuum. One ampule dropped on the ground and everybody in the building would be dead the next day with zero medical treatment available. Nothing could be done with some of the things we work with. So in the grand scheme of things, we are processing some of the deadliest snake venoms in the world, but to us, they're pretty mild. They're one of the safer things that I get to work with over the course of the day.
Just a normal day at the office, right?
Exactly, exactly. Now when I do extractions with these guys, that also affords a certain level of care that it's the same type of thing when we're working with the other toxins. We can't breathe them in, we can't touch them, we have to make sure that every single thing in our lab is critically clean. So it allows us to also have a venom product that is critically clean and goes beyond the realm of what some other venom labs might actually be able to work with. Every piece of glassware that we work with is essentially cleaner than just about anywhere else can actually achieve.
So clean and so regulated, we can't even step into the actual lab to view it. Instead, we're here in this conference room where Greg takes us through the process.
This was, I believe, 4 or 5 cotton mouths, and we can see we're getting about 3 milliliters of venom here. You can see it's a little bit cloudy. Typically the venom is going to be very clear, so it tells me that there's other stuff in the venom here that I'm going to want to remove. There's white blood cells, there's small particles from the snake's mouth, there can be a little bit of blood in these venoms. So the first thing I do when I actually process that is I spin it down at a very high speed so that I can remove all of those impurities. But I don't spin it down. My lab can spin things down to actually separate molecules with ultracentrifugation. So I want to spin it down to a speed where I remove blood cells, white blood cells, red blood cells, as well as any small fragments that might have been in that snake's mouth, but not fast enough that I remove anything that could be important. Every venom is amazing because every venom is a separate type of cocktail. Different types of enzymes, different types of proteins, all of different sizes and charges, and every researcher is looking at a different particle, a different molecule. So these guys are going to spin these down, they're going to purify down to every little subunit within that venom, and then people can look at each one of those for what medical uses they might be.
In the lab, the clean venom sample is frozen and then freeze-dried, removing all the water. It's now ready for transport, each country having different rules for importation. After all, this is a hazardous material.
I can't put this in a box and send it. This would actually be placed with proper labeling into a special bag with proper labeling into another box with proper labeling, and then the box that I ship actually has to contain information on what to do if you're exposed to this, and that information has to be inside the box and outside the box. So there are a lot of regulations and hoops that we need to jump through to make sure that gets out to the right person.
So when you're looking at this right here, just this little bit that you've collected and you're going to process could eventually help diabetes, cancer, whatever.
Yes. So it's not looked at specifically by one researcher for that myriad of uses. We have researchers across the world looking for specific things. So the first lab that receives this might break it down into integral subcomponents and then say, well, you know, this subcomponent happens to do this one thing, and they publish that paper. Well, researcher across on the other side of the world reads that paper and says, oh my gosh, you know, it's that protein is acting in this way. We could use that for this. And they publish that paper. And then it goes on and on and on until very finally you end up with more and more species of snakes or other invertebrates that produce venom being utilized in all sorts of different ways. And we have a lot of medically significant drugs that are finally being made from venom discoveries.
So there is some truth to this mad scientist type of theory, right?
I suppose there is, yeah.
One study using the venom from a copperhead is looking at its effects on breast cancer. And researchers are also looking at part of a pit viper's venom, which could be used to treat strokes. Stay with us. Ask the Vet is coming up next.
ABC 7, your Suncoast News. We're here for you. Watch ABC 7 wherever you are, on our live stream, on mysuncoast.com, on the ABC 7 My Suncoast app, powered by the Eye Associates, providing sight for life, featuring traffic maps and live radar, dining with recipes, and My Suncoast Restaurant Guide. Visit mysuncoast.com. Click on the Apps tab to download the ABC 7 My Suncoast app for Apple and Android.
Many websites selling medication may look professional and legitimate, but the vast majority of sites selling prescription drugs are doing so illegally. Criminals use websites to sell counterfeit medications that may contain life-threatening toxins. Dot Pharmacy is a website verification program that helps you identify safe and trustworthy online pharmacies. Purchasing medicine online can be safe and easy. Just look for pharmacy to the right of the dot in website addresses.
I'll be right back.
It's me, Artie. Come see what I collected from the Creative Galaxy in my idea box.
Transform your world.
Will you help me make art?
Each one of our journeys keeps us young. Before you throw it away,
Hey, I have an idea.
think outside the box.
We'll never get older. Each one Go be amazing!
Give your cardboard box another life. Recycle.
Dr. Glassman, one of the most common comments we hear at Dante's Den, why do my dogs eat their poop? I don't know, it's kind of disgusting, but there might be a reason.
Yeah, probably lots of reasons. Coprophagia is the technical name of an animal that eats fecal matter, whether it's their own or another animal's. And probably lots of reasons. We can only speculate. It's certainly normal behavior for pets. We think it's pretty gross, of course, but it is normal for them. First off, we can think of a dog or a cat that has a litter, and the babies are urinating and defecating as they're being nursed, and the mother will eat and clean up all the fecal matter. So the mother is always doing that, you know, for the kittens and the puppies already. So some of it may be a learned behavior. The puppies and kittens, they do it too because it's there and mom's doing it.
But somehow that's a little acceptable.
Yeah, that's
now
more
you have-
understandable.
Yes, but now you have your dogs who are
Right.
6 months, a year old,
Right.
2 years old.
Sure.
And, you know, my dogs kiss me, and I kiss them, and I love it.
That's why I don't lick I don't do tongues.
But there they are, eating the poop, and then they
Right.
come to me, and I go,
Yeah.
oh.
Well, again, so it may be a learned behavior. Maybe for puppies especially, maybe just play and curiosity. You know, they're so active they're exploring the world around them. So like, oh, what's this? Let me nibble on this. Maybe this is tasty. And maybe in some ways it tastes good to them, especially we think maybe cat feces is tasty to dogs because cats have a higher protein diet and a higher fat diet. So maybe there's some remnants in the fecal matter that might taste good. I mean, kind of hard to know if they really like it or not, you know?
Now, it has been said that it could be a vitamin deficiency.
Sure.
Is that a myth?
No, that's absolutely true. The nutritional deficiencies or diseases that cause you what we call maldigestion, malabsorption issues, where you're not digesting the food properly or you're not absorbing the food properly, then you're going to be nutritionally malnourished. And so a nutritional deficiency will give you abnormal cravings, and you might end up wanting to eat some fecal matter because maybe you're sensing somehow there's some ingredients, some remnants in there that might be beneficial to me.
Now, can it also be left over from the wild when
Sure.
they're in packs?
Exactly,
And of
scavenging, because they're
Yes.
scavengers, so they're always looking for all kinds of food. So it's normal scavenging behavior is probably part of it too, absolutely.
So, can we prevent it?
Sure. Well, the best thing is, of course, prevent access to the stool. And if you have, you know, once your pet's a little older and getting house trained, if you had a puppy, you clean up 100% right after the puppy, so it doesn't have the opportunity to do it. And if you're leash walking, which I would certainly recommend to train your puppy, you do positive reinforcement, like maybe even give it a treat, or certainly pet it and praise it when it defecates, and you give it a negative reinforcement, like tug on its collar or say no when it's going near the fecal matter so it doesn't eat it. So preventing the access and some little behavior training to help prevent it. There are things we try to add to foods. There are things you can buy on the market. Forbid is a common product that's been around for years, that you add it to the food that they eat, and we think it might impart a bad taste to the stool. And there's different ingredients. There's enzymes, yucca, parsley, different ingredients that manufacturers put in to try to maybe give a bad taste. I've never found them to work very effectively myself.
So I think the all-important question is, does it hurt them?
We don't think so in general, because again, it's normal behavior. But it may be a sign of nutritional or diseases, so get your vet to check it out, of course, if it seems excessive and persistent.
So, the lesson to be learned, pick up that poop quick. Great advice from the doc as usual. Sure, in the snow and all of that. Just, yeah, whoops, Cliff. All I had to do was mention
It
snow.
is animal outtakes after all.
I mentioned
What
snow
did I
and
say
he
about
was...
jumping off a cliff, not jumping as a cliff?
This is where the host goes for a cup of coffee.
Performing on stage takes mental and physical preparation. But one thing I never thought to prepare for was cervical cancer. 91% of cervical cancers are caused by the human papillomavirus, or HPV. The good news is there are vaccines that can protect you or your children from cancer. I survived my cancer, but you can stop cancer before it starts. Talk to your doctor and go to thinkaboutthelink.org to learn more.
Don't allow your weight to threaten your health or control your future. Excess weight or obesity can cause emotional and physical health risks. But you can take control. The Your Weight Matters campaign offers free resources and tips to help you measure and understand your weight. Take the Your Weight Matters Challenge. The free toolkit prepares you to speak with a healthcare provider about your weight. Your weight does matter. Take the challenge and take control today.
Check out My Suncoast Dining on mysuncoast.com, your guide to the foodie lifestyle. ABC 7's own Chef Judy serves up her favorite recipes, cooking tips and trends, dining blogs, step-by-step videos, and Suncoast Restaurant Guide. You'll find it all at mysuncoast.com/dining. Watch Good Morning Suncoast on ABC 7, weekdays starting at 5. ABC 7, your official Florida lottery station for the Suncoast.